That same day, of course, Virginsky was also arrested, and in the heat of the moment, his whole household as well. Irina Prokhorovna, her sister, aunt, and even the girl student have long been free. They even say that Shigliov, too, is supposedly sure to be released in the nearest future since he does not fit into any category of the accused. However, this is still just talk. Virginsky admitted his guilt at once and in everything. He was sick in bed with a fever when he was arrested. They say he was almost glad, quote, "A weight fell from my heart," end of quote, he is supposed to have said. One hears of him that he is now giving evidence frankly, yet even with a certain dignity, and has not surrendered any of his, quote, "bright hopes," end of quote, though at the same time he curses the political path, as opposed to the social one, onto which he had been so accidentally and light-mindedly drawn, quote, "by a whirlwind of concurrent circumstances," end of quote. His behavior during the committing of the murder is explained in a mitigating way for him, and it seems that he, too, may count on a certain mitigation of his lot. So at least it is asserted among us. But an alleviation of Urkel's fate will hardly be possible. This one, since his arrest, has either kept silent or distorted the truth as far as possible. Not one word of repentance has been obtained from him so far, and yet he has aroused a certain sympathy for himself, even in the sternest judges. By his youth, by his defenselessness, by obvious indications that he was simply the fanatical victim of a political seducer, and most of all, by what has been discovered about his behavior towards his mother, to whom he used to send almost half of his insignificant pay. His mother is now with us. She is a weak and ailing woman, grown old before her time. She weeps and literally grovels at their feet, pleading for her son. Come what may, there are many among us who feel sorry for Urkel. Liputin was arrested in Petersburg, where he had already been living for 2 whole weeks. An almost incredible thing occurred with him, which is even difficult to explain. They say he had a passport and another name and every opportunity for successfully slipping abroad, and quite a considerable amount of money with him, and yet he stayed in Petersburg and did not go anywhere. He spent some time looking for Stavrogin and Peter Stepanovich, and then suddenly went on a binge and got into debauchery beyond all measure, like a man who has utterly lost all common sense and understanding of his position. And so he was arrested in Petersburg, in a house of ill fame somewhere, and none too sober. Rumor has it that he has by no means lost heart now, is lying in his testimony, and is preparing himself for the forthcoming trial with a certain solemnity and hope. He even intends to have some say at his trial. Tolkachenko, arrested somewhere in the district capital 10 days after his flight, behaves with incomparably more politeness, does not lie, does not dodge, tells all he knows, does not justify himself, acknowledges his guilt in all modesty, but is also inclined to loquacity. He speaks much and willingly, and when it comes to a knowledge of the people and its revolutionary elements, he even postures and desires to produce an effect. One hears that he, too, intends to have his say at the trial. Generally, he and Liputin are not very frightened, which is even strange. I repeat, the affair is not yet over. Now, 3 months later, our society has rested, relaxed, recovered, acquired its own opinion, so much so that some even regard Peter Stepanovich himself almost as a genius, at least as having, quote, abilities of genius, end of quote. Organization, sir, they say in the club, raising a finger aloft. However, all this is quite innocent, and besides, those who say it are not too many. Others, on the contrary, do not deny him acuteness of abilities, but couple it with a total ignorance of reality, a terrible abstractedness, a dull and deformed one-sidedness of development, and proceeding from all that, an extraordinary light-mindedness concerning his moral aspects. Everyone agrees. Here there is no argument. I really do not know who else to mention so as not to forget anyone. Mavriky Nikolaevich has gone away somewhere altogether. The old Drozdov woman has lapsed into second childhood. However, there remains one more very grim story to tell. I will confine myself to facts alone. On her arrival, Varvara Petrovna stayed at her townhouse. All the accumulated news poured in on her at once and shook her terribly. She shut herself up alone. It was evening. Everyone was tired and went to bed early. In the morning, the maid, with a mysterious air, handed Darya Pavlovna a letter. This letter, by her account, had come the day before, but late, when everyone had already retired, so that she dared not wake her up. It had come not in the mail, but through an unknown person, to Alexei Yegorich in Skvoreshniki. And Alexei Yegorich had at once delivered it himself, yesterday evening into her hands and had at once gone back to Skvoreshniki. Darya Pavlovna, her heart pounding, looked at the letter for a long time without daring to open it. She knew who it was from. It had been written by Nikolai Stavrogin. She read the inscription on the envelope. To Alexei Yegorich, to be given to Darya Pavlovna in secret. Here is this letter, word for word, without correcting the least mistake in style of a young Russian squire who never fully learned Russian grammar, in spite of all his European education. Quote, My good Darya Pavlovna, you once wanted to be my nurse and made me promise to send for you when needed. I am going away in 2 days and will not come back. Want to go with me? Last year, like Herzen, I registered as a citizen of Kent and Uri, and no one knows it. I have already bought a small house there. I have 12,000 rubles left. We'll go and live there eternally. I don't want to move anywhere ever. The place is very dull, a ravine, the mountains cramped sight and thought, very grim. It was because there was a small house for sale. If you don't like it, I'll sell it and buy another in another place. I'm not well, but I hope with the local air I'll get rid of my hallucinations. Physically, that is, and morally you know all. Only is it all? I've told you a lot about my life, but not all. Even to you, not all. Incidentally, I confirm that in my conscience I am guilty of my wife's death. I have not seen you since then, and so I'm confirming it. I'm also guilty before Lizaveta Nikolaevna, but here you do know. Here you predicted almost everything. Better don't come. The fact that I'm calling you to me is a terrible baseness, and why should you bury your life with me? You are dear to me, and when I was in anguish I felt good near you. Only in your presence could I speak of myself aloud. Nothing follows from that. You yourself defined it as nursing. It's your expression. Why sacrifice so much? Realize also that I do not pity you since I'm calling you, and do not respect you since I'm waiting for you to come. And yet I call and wait. In any case, I need your answer because I must leave very soon. In such case, I'll go alone. I have no hope from Uri. I'm simply going. I did not choose a gloomy place on purpose. Nothing binds me to Russia. Everything in it is as foreign to me as everywhere else. True, I disliked living in it more than elsewhere, but even in it I was unable to come to hate anything. I've tested my strength everywhere. You advised me to do that, quote, in order to know myself, end of quote. This testing for myself and for show proved it to be boundless as before all my life. In front of your very eyes I endured a slap from your brother. I acknowledged my marriage publicly, but what to apply my strength to, that I have never seen, nor do I see it now, despite your encouragements in Switzerland, which I believed. I am as capable now as ever before of wishing to do a good deed, and I take pleasure in that. Along with it, I wish for evil and also feel pleasure. But both the one and the other, as always, are too shallow and are never very much. My desires are far too weak. They cannot guide. One can cross a river on a log, but not on a ship. All this so that you don't think I'm going to Uri with any hopes. As always, I do not blame anyone. I've tried great debauchery and exhausted my strength in it, but I don't like debauchery and I did not want it. You've been observing me lately. Do you know that I even looked at these negators of ours with spite, envying from them? Do you know that I even looked at these negators of ours with spite, envying them their hopes? But your fears were empty. I could not be their comrade because I shared nothing. Nor could I do it out of ridicule, for spite, and not because I was afraid of the ridiculous. I cannot be afraid of the ridiculous. But because, after all, I have the habits of a decent man and felt disgusted. Still, if I had more spite and envy for them, I might even have gone over to them. You can judge how easy it has been for me and how I've tossed about. Dear friend, tender and magnanimous being whom I divined, perhaps you dream of giving me so much love and of pouring upon me so much of the beautiful from your beautiful soul that you hope in that way finally to set up some goal for me. No, you had better be more careful. My love will be as shallow as I myself am, and you will be unhappy. Your brother told me that he who loses his ties with his earth also loses his gods. That is all his goals. One can argue endlessly about everything, but what poured out of me was only negation, with no magnanimity and no force. Or not even negation. Everything is always shallow and listless. Magnanimous Kirillov could not endure his idea and shot himself. But I do see that he was magnanimous because he was not in his right mind. I can never lose my mind, nor can I ever believe an idea to the same degree as he did. I cannot even entertain an idea to the same degree. I could never shoot myself. I know I ought to kill myself, to sweep myself off the earth like a vile insect, but I'm afraid of suicide because I'm afraid of showing magnanimity. I know it will be one more deceit, the last deceit in an endless series of deceits. What's the use of deceiving oneself just so as to play at magnanimity? There never can be indignation or shame in me, and so no despair either. Forgive me for writing so much. I've come to my senses, and this is accidental. This way 100 pages are too little and 10 lines are enough. To call for a nurse, 10 lines are enough. Since I left, I've been living 6 stations away in the station master's house. I got to know him while I was on a spree in Petersburg 5 years ago. No one knows I'm living here. Write care of him. I enclose the address, Nikolai Stavrogin. End of quote. Darya Pavlovna went at once and showed the letter to Varvara Petrovna. She read it and asked Dasha to step out so that she could read it again by herself. But she somehow very quickly called her again. Will you go? She asked almost timidly. I will, Dasha replied. Get ready, we're going together. Dasha looked at her questioningly. And what is there for me to do here now? Does it make any difference? I, too, will register in Uri and live in the ravine. Don't worry, I won't bother you. They quickly began getting ready in order to catch the noon train, but before half an hour had gone by, Alexei Yegorich came from Skvoreshniki. He reported that Nikolai Vsevolodovich had suddenly arrived that morning on the early train and was in Skvoreshniki, but, quote, in such a state that he wouldn't answer any questions, walked through all the rooms and locked himself in his half. I concluded on coming to report without his orders, Alexei Yegorich added with a very imposing air. Varvara Petrovna gave him a piercing look and asked no questions. The carriage was ready instantly. She went with Dasha. On the way, it is said, she crossed herself frequently. All the doors in his, quote, his half, end of quote, were open, and Nikolai Vsevolodovich was nowhere to be found. Maybe in the attic, ma'am, Fomushka said cautiously. Remarkably, several servants followed Varvara Petrovna into, quote, his half, end of quote. The rest of the servants all waited in the reception room. Never before would they have allowed themselves such a breach of etiquette. Varvara Petrovna noticed it, but said nothing. They went upstairs to the attic. There were 3 rooms there. No one was found in any of them. Could he maybe have gone up there? Someone pointed at the door to the garret. Indeed, the permanently closed door to the garret was now unlocked and standing wide open. It led to a long, very narrow and terribly steep wooden stairway that went almost under the roof. That went up almost under the roof. There was a sort of little room there, too. I won't go up there. Why on earth would he climb up there? Varvara Petrovna turned terribly pale, looking around at the servants. They stared at her and said nothing. Dasha was trembling. Varvara Petrovna rushed up the stairs. Dasha followed her, but as soon as she entered the garret, she cried out and fell unconscious. The citizen of the canton Yuri was hanging just inside the door. On the table lay a scrap of paper with the penciled words, quote, blame no one, it was I, end of quote. With it on the table, there also lay a hammer, a piece of soap, and a big nail, evidently prepared in reserve. The strong silk cord upon which Nikolai Vsevolatovich had hanged himself, evidently prepared and chosen beforehand, was heavily smeared with soap. Everything indicated premeditation and consciousness to the last minute. Our medical men, after the autopsy, completely and emphatically ruled out insanity.